Welcome back to the Berg podcast, everybody. I'm here in lieu of Brian. So Brian's out. Ford and I went rogue, stole the equipment, and we're on the road here. So
yeah, we got the equipment. So good luck listening to this one. I'm sorry for everybody that tunes in.
All right, Ford, you want to tell them what we're gonna talk about today?
Yeah, well, we did another podcast. Dan was out of town on a thing with Komatsu, and so Brian and I just kind of reminisced about how we met. And so we thought we'd do the same thing, but just Dan and I kind of talk about the pre-Berg days and then kind of bring it up to today.
All right. So we can sort of get started. I'll say, so I had started a new job at Brightview. It was then called Brickman. I was brought in to manage GlaxoSmithKline. And so I still sort of remember that. I got there. I met a guy who we're still friends with, Rob Grafe. He'll never listen to a podcast. His boys might, but so Rob's a really smart guy.
He didn't even like a cell phone.
Doesn't even like a cell phone. Does not have a voicemail. But I met with Rob to look at the snow, and he said, well, what do you think we're going to do? I said, well, it's going to snow, and then we're going to clear the snow. And he laughed at me because I didn't have a cognizance of what it was really going to take. And that's sort of how I went into that situation.
And you had been doing snow before, but not at that like kind of facility.
Correct. Not at that kind of facility. So I wasn't worried about it, which is par for the course with me. I thought it would just get done one way or another. And you sort of came into it the same way. So you had as I recall, there was another contractor that you were working for.
Yeah, the contractor, we actually met on a other client's site, and he's like, hey, do you do snow? And we're just shooting the breeze. He was a landscape type contractor, and he's like, I got this opportunity because he knew somebody somewhere, as all things are, who you know. And he's like, hey, we got this opportunity. I need someone with some equipment. You want to go with me? So we pull up to this job site and went through all the rhetoric of just getting onto the job site. And you guys were on the other side of gate 3. I remember meeting at the other side of gate 3. And it was you, and was it Davini or somebody else was with you? I forget. It was somebody.
Either Davini or Dave, or it could have been Greg.
Yeah, it was somebody. And like, all right, let's walk around and look at this place. And all right, let's walk. Again, I think we both had that snow experience before. We're more residential or more straightforward, where when it stopped snowing, you plowed it and then you went home. Mm-hmm. That was not what they were looking for. So what I recall of that is first time I really remember interacting with you. It was the first real snowstorm. It snowed. In snow, you don't want it to snow midweek early. In the first time you've ever done a site, it snowed midweek early. And they don't close down. They don't care.
They don't close down. So Ford, the actual sub shows up, and then Ford shows up, supposed to be supporting with big equipment. I don't think he really had much outside of a little bit of labor. And you showed up. You had a really nice truck, pretty nice truck, and a tailgate spreader. And Rob Grafe just started laughing at that. This is how we were going to do this. And we were wildly undermanned. I remember, you sold that truck and bought other things. And it was sort of like, I'd say we were like fast friends. We both sort of we knew we'd get done. And we just sort of took it that it was us versus, the client, not an adversarial, but they were going to bombard us and we were going to have to deal with it and feed them answers.
I mean, you're sitting here. So, but that was one of the best client, relationships I think we ever had, because we were both realizing that we need to get this done. It wasn't like pointing fingers or throwing people under the bus. I know you went to some meetings, you told me later, where you had to kind of cover us, but I think that, I don't keep my vehicles very long. That's kind of a joke here. I think that was the shortest I had a vehicle. I had like 3 months. We got to the first snowstorm and I went to the local dealership and I was like, yeah, my cool pickup truck, I need a dump truck. And that truck was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's how we sort of met. My background before that obviously was construction, but it was, more on the electrical, actual vertical construction side inside. So that's sort of where I came from. And then the next thing, jump forward, I remember, you and I, we became friends. We spent a lot of time together because of snow. You could talk about the Gringo Motel with your dad, having the motorhome there. We could, I used to
Our wives got a little jealous at that point because they said we spent more time together than we did with them, which during snow season, that does happen.
That does happen. I remember I had my Subaru at that point. And we were trying, I showed you some Jersey driving in the snow. I don't think you were real comfortable with it.
Actually, the big Lincoln. Or,
that
was the
Lincoln before the WRX. Yeah, that thing you don't want to drive fast in the snow. That was dangerous.
But I remember stuff like working with the guys from Grafe's team. What did he have on his eyelids?
Oh yeah, these won't close until I sleep or something.
Yeah, these guys were great workers, great guys. But probably if you saw them on the street and didn't know them, you probably would maybe cross the street or something. Yeah.
Well, you remember I sold them that Lincoln in a snowstorm. I sold it to them before the snowstorm, but I gave it to them in a snowstorm. We came back after a break. It was a long snowstorm. Do you remember that? They disassembled and reassembled the car while they were there. I came back and
it had chrome on it that wasn't there before.
It had chrome. It had the commensurate, the dice in the mirror and stuff hanging from the ceiling. They converted it right away.
Oh yeah. So was it 3 years or 4 years that we did that first?
So it was 3 years. For 3 years, I was with them, almost 3 full years. Right around 3
Yeah.
years, I did that. It was you and I, and we got closer. We hung out.
Yeah. I remember we talked during the summertime because there'd be like some other work to do, whatever it was. But I remember that was part of the, it was just like I was down in what is now Scott's office, which was my office back then, and I'd be on the phone or whatever, and there'd be someone like, those were long conversations. We were just shooting the breeze because you were managing the site, didn't have to do much, and like so you had some time in the afternoons, like when you were waiting on the crews to get done or something. So we'd be on the phone, just talking about the general stuff, and then I think the other couple of funny other parts was like you were getting married the first year we were doing snow, or the second year.
Second year, I believe.
Second year. I remember you invited me to your wedding.
Yeah.
And I go home. I thought it was the first year.
Maybe it was the first year.
I think it was the first year.
Yeah,
I hadn't known you very
right,
long at all, right?
12, Mars 12, got married in 11, so that was the first year, yes.
It was the first season. We maybe been working for like a couple months together, and you're like, hey, come to my wedding. And I go home and talk to Tamara, and I was like, this guy I just met invited me to his wedding. And like, we knew each other, but like, I would never expect to have been on the invite list, type deal. And so then, like, all right, cool. And then he's like, all right, come to the bachelor party too. Like, all right, cool. I was like, I don't know anybody else of his people. Like, we talked about all your family, we talked about your friends, but like talking about him and meeting him are two different things. So we went to the bachelor party, and you guys stay up way later than I do. So what was it? The band didn't start till like 3 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, it was like a second show. Yeah, in Atlantic City, far outside of Ford's territory.
Right. And I mean, I've been going to Ocean City a lot, my whole life with my family. And you're like, hey, we're gonna have the wedding down in Ocean City, and we're gonna rent this house for like a bunch of friends can hang out there. And Tamara again's like, you know any of those people? I was like, no, we're just going down to this house. So you rented some big house because you know the island better than anybody. And there was like a bunch of people. It was like this just throws all in a big pile of stew because it was friends from everywhere. And we had a great time together and great time at your wedding. But it was just weird because it was one of those where like, I don't usually go many places where I don't at least know a couple people.
Know a few people. Well, and I'm ironically, like, I'm the same way. Like I hang out with who I hang out with when I'm not working. The funny thing I remember, it starting way back that far back with us is, you remember so we rented the house and there was a lot of different people there, Aaron's friends, everybody that was in the bridal party, and then some of our close friends. And then you were there. Now we're real close friends now, but at that point, we were just getting
I was
to know
just
each
some
other.
guy.
You were a guy that I liked, but I identified, I was like, this is a guy I can hang out with anytime. And you remember we had to run they wanted to run to the liquor store.
Yes.
But all the cars were boxed in.
Yes.
So the last car in was one of Aaron's friends' cars.
Yes. And her fiance at the time, or boyfriend.
Yeah, her boyfriend at the time.
Makes me look small.
Yeah.
Probably 6'5", 350.
Jay's a big boy. Yeah. He's
a big man.
He's a big man. So it was the two of you in a convertible Volkswagen Beetle.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I remember seeing you coming back in the liquor store with Jay, and it was like so hilarious. Like they were just, both of you were too big.
If way back then there would have been camera phones or like good ones, we definitely would have pictures
I would have
of that.
I have some funny pictures, going back, because you and I spent, as my kids, I had more kids, and we got busier. We don't neither of us do as much as we used to, but we used to spend a fair amount of time together outside of work doing different things. When you call the picture on my phone when you call, and but that's one of the first things I remember, obviously, is about the wedding. And then we started to spend more time together. Work got more involved. You picked up the other site. You got away from the subcontractors. I wanted to just utilize you. And then I brought you to the other site, and you had both sites. And so then we started to work together more, and it stretched out to be a longer window. And then I guess let's go to, I remember where it happened, but how did it happen that you sort of decided that, maybe you'd want to give me a shot here?
Well, I think it was, we had a decent snow season the year before. And at that point, we realized that snow by itself was becoming a big enough thing that we might need somebody. I think the original paperwork was kind of like director of snow / whatever else.
Yeah.
And at that point, as always with big companies, there was more transitions going on back at your previous employer. And so it was like, all right, we're going to do this and flip it around. And because it was a big concern. One was that if the client didn't like you moving, we could lose the work that we were doing.
Right.
But we took the risk, and we met at a restaurant, and it was like, all right, here's what we think. Here's what could be. And all right. And then I remember like we had some conversations ahead of time. So it wasn't like completely like a shocker per se. But it was like, all right, well, I got to talk to the people. And then at that point, you were living like, what is that I always
Yeah.
say Philadelphia
Yeah,
based.
Belmont. I was living in Belmont
Yeah.
Hills in Lower Marion.
Every time I drive that down, like, I don't know how he did that for years driving all
I
the
don't
way
know
out.
how I did it now.
That was, I mean, it's a fun place to be, but man, driving that every day on the Schuylkill and stuff, no, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for the Schuylkill.
Yeah. And so then you're like, all right, I'll possibly do this. And we didn't have enough for snow. So we also wanted you to be like involved with some estimating and we had a guy working here who been around the community for a long time. He's like, all right, he was moving on somewhere else. And he said, I'll give you like 6 months or a year to like work with Dan to kind of get him up to speed. I think like 3 weeks later, he's like, yep, I'm done. So was it 3 weeks?
It was
6
about
weeks?
3 weeks. Yeah. Cause I started, we always talk about that. I actually started before
Yeah, you're
my
coming out
start
in
date,
evenings
'cause I
to
was
kind of
coming
like
in the
learn,
evenings
right?
to try and learn. And then I got here and he left before that month was over. And it was just like, okay, well, so
And he left us in the middle. We had a couple jobs with him. So we were
Yes.
kind of like trying to run the jobs that he had won while him not being here and also learn how to do it at the same time.
Yeah. And he was supportive. I
yeah.
don't want to say anything that
it wasn't like it was bad blood that he left. It's just that he had to go where he was going, and that would already been committed before he came here, and he was just kind of helping us out. So we understood, but we just thought we had a little more time.
It did accelerate the curve. Yeah,
yes.
It accelerated the curve. And then, ironically funny, and we'll talk about it, is when you originally made the agreement with me, you set it up in a way that I would be rewarded if I grew snow.
Right.
But it was almost blind to what could actually happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you didn't consider it. I didn't consider it. And after year one, you and I spoke and I said, we got to change this. Like this could cause a lot of problems. Rewarding me for top line is a bad idea. It's a bad plan.
Well, exactly. Because you come in and I mean, timing in life is just what it is. But that winter was the Merc year, as we all refer to it.
It was the Merc year. So it was a combination of getting the biggest manufacturing site within hundreds of miles of here,
yes,
and more snow than we ever get. And that did strain that relationship with that customer that I came from, from the client that I came from, and put a lot of stress in that situation where they didn't like me doing the same thing I was doing previously, but doing it to them this time because their people weren't as open to how I managed those sites.
Right. And I mean, we went from, I think probably when you came, there was 10 people here, maybe 12 at that point. I'm
something like that.
Remembering that winter we had like 45, we were everybody that could drive a vehicle that wanted to make some extra money that winter. We were working.
Well, we brought my family out. Remember my brothers came out. And the
brothers came from Jersey to help us.
One came from Philly, one came from Jersey in the middle of the night just to help us.
Yeah. Your first kid.
Yeah. I had kids at that point, Charlotte. And, so it's funny. I look back and the most meaningful part of my adult life happened since I've been with Berg. Clearly, like I didn't get married while I was with Berg, but I had just had Mara. Yeah. Mara had just been born when we made the transition over.
Right.
And the
tough part for you, I mean, that was a global or national company at that point, right? Before when it was, just had a kid, like it wasn't, and you're going to like a startup of essence, a small little like they're here today, maybe they're there tomorrow type of thing. So that was a big risk on you guys' part.
Yeah, that was it wasn't a concern on my part because honestly, I did buy in from the very beginning that I thought there was something about you that I thought made this really more than just possible. It made it likely that if the things were lined up, it could be done. But it was a concern because if I could stay within the framework, now years later, I realized I probably could not have operated in that framework. But if I could have, they did want me to do certain things and grow a certain route, but I felt like this was a better opportunity for me. And so, I came over without reservation and it took off pretty fast. We started to grow very quickly and then Dirt started to grow, and then that's where I think our friendship really became stronger because it was basically you and I against the world trying to build this company and figure out what we were doing, until we got to Brian, who you already did the interview with. Brian, really stabilized us.
Right.
But even we've talked about it and probably outside of closed doors never said it. But, when Brian came on, you and I looked one way outwardly to everybody, including our spouse, Aaron and Tamara, but internally we were trying to figure out how to be this thing, how to be what we had built.
Well, and I think there's someone says it a lot in a podcast that I listen to, but it's like, we just thought we could keep out earning our stupidity, right? Like we just were like, just keep bringing more in the door and somehow it'll work out. Unfortunately, that's not how big, finance works that way, especially because people don't pay you the money that you supposedly earned. It becomes a trick. But at that point, it was just like, go get the work we can get and we'll worry about it later type deal. That's kind of where the scenario we were into.
Yeah, for sure. And so the funny thing I think about my relationship with you since we met and became friends is there's some ways we're very different. And there's some ways we're very similar. but people don't often perceive, they don't get right what the similarities and the differences actually are, because we have roles to play, not just at work, but who we want to be, how we want to be portrayed. And so I think that we allow each other vicariously to be a certain way, because we can be doing something and it be perceived that we're doing it because of Dan, or we're doing it because of Ford, and that's the people's perception, and that's fine. But you and I never really cared. We have a lot of different like joke lines between the two of us of how we do things, but it was just so natural. It was so easy to get along, and then everybody around us, at least from my perception, seem to get along as well. You know what I mean? Like Tamara and Aaron, they get along fine. They're good friends. You know what I mean? And it worked out. You know what I mean? Like I started to meet your friends and I was friends with them. You started to meet some of my friends and my family and you were friends with them. For a while you came down the shore, stayed right next door.
Yeah.
Um,
Your brother Mike and
yeah, my brother Mike and
doing
everybody.
things like that. And I was thinking back to when we had a guy here that was like doing kind of running a job for us, right? And I didn't pick you over him for the position, but he felt that position was supposed to be his, right? And so we're in the middle of winter, and like he just was kind of checked out already. And I remember that was probably the most difficult conversation, or like when I got probably the most heated in my entire life was dealing with him over that scenario, because he just wasn't didn't want to be part of the team at that point. And it was
and it's
and I mean, we've talked about this. We've had to learn, like, each of us has our skill sets and each of us have our strengths and weaknesses. But when you hit yourself to a particular path, you got to ride that path. You can't just like, oh, it didn't work out and jump on and off. I mean, we've brought people in over the years that we thought were going to do some type of management position, and they just didn't work with the team. And it actually mattered more than their technical skills were higher than what we even needed. But unfortunately, their social skills were not appropriate for how we do things, and it just didn't work out for them.
Yeah, and it was a struggle. You know what I mean? We had to, the combination of me not having a learning curve that we had anticipated to get into this industry, and just the nature of construction, regardless of which one it is. If you're not an electrician, the electricians are not going to treat you real great. They're not going to treat you poorly, but if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
So not having a learning curve and all those things, certainly made it hard for them. And it made it something that we had to deal with, and we've had to manage the whole time. Slowly but surely we got there. But what we came to realize is if we built the company around understanding that each person, what they bring to the table is valuable, and try and take as best advantage as we can to put them in a position where they can utilize that skill. And for some time, you've had your eye on what you think my skill can be best used for. And you continue to direct and manage to put it in a position where it's getting the most benefit out of that. And then we fill in the pieces behind that, to support me so that I'm able to do what you need me to do, what the company needs me to do. And so, it's one of those things. One of the biggest things for me that really attracted me in the sense of really wanting to be involved with you and wanting to be friends with you is how much I didn't know anything about like the whole servant leadership thing and everything. I don't even know if that book was written at that point. Like, I don't know when it came out and all that, but because I was not a big book reader. Like, you read books constantly. That was not me. Now I read books sometimes, but it's mostly because of you. You'll say, like,
I drop it on your desk.
You drop it on my desk,
this.
so I read it. But it was that. It was you just seemingly, it was always about just the greater good, getting things done. And it's one of the differences between where we came from. You know what I mean? New Jersey's a very me place. You know what I mean? You're going to get it done, but you're going to get it done because of me. I'm going to try and win. It's a different style. And so it attracted me to that, because it was like, okay, this guy's really just interested in winning for the sake of winning, for it being better, for getting done, for finishing. It wasn't self-serving.
Yeah.
And so that really was something that I noticed and made it very interesting. And it made it easy to become part of the team, because who wouldn't want to be part of a team that's trying to be better for everybody, not just the big man wins and whatever anybody gets, they get.
Well, what do we talk about? We always joke about the difference between Lancaster County and New Jersey, right? New Jersey, a contractor is 2 employees and a guy in shiny shoes that drives a Escalade, right? Or some kind of fancy car, right? And then you come out here to Lancaster County, where I was born and raised, and it's a guy with 300 people, and he drives a 1984 F-150. Like, it's just, it's the growth around you and the mentality of how things are done. Both places, things get done. It's just get done a little bit differently.
Yeah. I mean, I've been super fortunate to come into this opportunity and been able to be a part of this team as they grew. And it certainly afforded us a lot of things. professionally, personally, emotionally. So I'm looking at it. We can look out the window. We're sitting in my office, and your truck's out there, my truck's out there, and I have a nice truck, a nice SUV. And but I often say to you, like in New Jersey, if you don't have a Denali,
Right.
then you did it wrong. You know what I mean? If your superintendent is not driving a Denali, then you're not winning a public job, because you didn't you
They're
haven't
concerned
succeeded.
about your financial
They're
stability.
concerned about your financial stability. Whereas over here, it's like if you drive something really shiny, you better be real careful, because they're going to assume that you're ripping them off. That's the only way you would have that. Why are you showing that sort of thing? So it's really put me in a funny spot where I see both sides, but now I'm also like trying to be the other side. It reminds me of Ford knows people who listen may realize I like analogies, and I think in relationship of other things. It's usually sports, but Pulp Fiction, when he says about I'm trying real hard, Ringo, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to not do that now, to say like, okay, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to show anybody anything. I'm just going to be happy with who I am. And if I'm doing the right thing and being a part of the team and everybody else can be happy about it, then that's good, because that's all I really need, And as I say that, Ford, what funny just now happened. So we were down south. We just got back. We were traveling. We were very fortunate. We got to go down, see Komatsu's training ground and their factories. We took some of the team down. We took 4 or 5 of our really our the core of who we think is really done a great job for us for a long time. And then a couple of new guys we took with us, younger guys. Tried to have a good mix representative of the company and take them down there and have a nice trip and see some things. And we were down there. So we're on the training grounds, and I can run equipment. In the words of Bear Stewart, there's a lot of people that can run equipment. There's not many who can operate it. I can run it. If you give me a
find the key, you can find the
I can get it on.
Yeah.
I'll get it to move. In a track hoe, I could load trucks.
Yeah.
But we've all know the dozer's like, if you want to make fun of me, put me in a dozer. A loader's worse, but most people can't run a loader.
Yeah.
A track loader. And so they're out there and they're like, Dan, you got to try this 71. And I'm like, okay. And they don't know how much I can or can't run it, because in my role currently, you wouldn't generally see me in a dozer. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll run the dozer. And so I'm like, all right, now all these guys are here. I got to run the dozer. And so I start running the dozer, and I didn't want GPS on, because what does that prove? And so I'm running it, and Ben, we all had headsets like we're wearing. And Ben's like, Dan, I actually got to say, I mean, you could actually run a dozer a little bit. I expected that to be far worse the way you described it. And I was like, well, I mean, come on, it's all bumpy. Andrew Geezy said I made a nice dirt bike track. But it was one of those things, and it was funny, like relationship wise with the guys, is that part of it is just being humble enough that I'm going to say, I'm going to be okay. And it's not my job to run this equipment every day, but I'll give it a shot.
The guy we were talking about earlier, Steve Keach, who, was helping us learn and helped us grow here as a company. He always said that like his job, I mean, he was like a master, a head estimator, whatever you want to call it. His job wasn't to understand how to run it. His job was to understand how quickly it could get things done, and then do a math formula to figure that out. He's like, my job is not to be the best dozer operator. My job is to figure out that dozer can push this many yards of dirt this far and this amount of time.
Yeah. And, Ford, it brings up something really funny about, we were talking about skill set and what you think I can best serve the team, be the best leader and the best team member by doing. And that's one of the funny things we've really had as we've brought people on. Is you can do a lot of jobs. I have the ability to fill a lot of roles at Berg, but you can clearly see when I'm best suited to do it and when I'm not. And that's one of them. I mean, I can't estimate like Steve Keach. I mean, we could do the same estimate and we might arrive at the same number 90% of the time, but I don't get there the way Steve did.
No.
You know what I mean? I don't get there. When you come out of that line of thinking and you're that specific, it breeds a very safe, reliable estimate. You know what I mean? Whereas as mine was more based on gut, I learned what it took to do things and how fast we could do it. And at the end of the day, what the number is. Like, I know that I can get X for this. So that's in my head. I know it's the number.
I was actually looking around because there was a book, the Caterpillar production book, right? And we have a couple of them. They haven't updated them in a while. I don't know if they don't want to tell us anymore, like what their yardages and stuff was. But I would go into Steve's office and it would be open every day. Not just open, like sitting there collecting dust, but he was reading that and like, okay, a D6 and like this many yards. I mean, like his was such a scientific approach. And, there's many ways to skin a cat, as they say, or different like scenarios, but there's multiple ways to get to the same end. Usually the question though on the estimating, and which is, when you're doing larger projects and stuff, is more that you have to then actually do the work. Getting the number can be done. It's the question of, okay, do you have everything in the places so that the guys in the field can actually figure, it's a play. You're creating the playbook for the team. That's what, it's this, you're going to go back to sports analogy, and, trying to win the game is cool, but if there's no pages in the book, they don't know where they're going forward to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the answer can be $4.2 million, but
Right.
if nobody has any idea how you got to $4.2 million, that's great. Except how
One
are we
big
supposed
lump
to do that
sum
work?
doesn't work that well.
It doesn't work that well. You know what I remember about that book? Because Steve gave me that book and he said, you're going to need this. And he put little yellow Post-its. You remember he put yellow Post-its,
little tabs everywhere, right?
Tabs with every piece of equipment that we owned at that point. And I used it for a while and I tried. It's just so different than how I want to bid. And so I continue to bid. I don't remember who we brought on that I gave that book to. That book is still in our building, and somebody has it. And I just remember just recently that I saw, and they were like, "Why are these tabs in here?" And I was like, "Well,
equipment we don't even have any longer.
We don't have any of that equipment anymore, except for maybe the D6. Maybe I don't think we had the 6 then.
Nah,
I think we had the 5.
Yeah,
the 5's still there, but
5K.
Those tabs were still there, and I said, "Oh, those were the tabs for the equipment we had," so that I would know.
There's probably like 8 tabs then at that point.
There's like 6. Yeah, there's like 6 tabs. Versus fast forward now. We were down when we were in Georgia, and they said, like, "Do you own any of this equipment?" And I was like, "Yeah, we have all of this equipment." Like, they were asking me about excavators, and I said, "How many we have?" And it's just such a different world, what we've built this into. And going back to Steve Keach, something I carry with me, and I remember every day we're working, is Steve said to you and I after he had moved on and he was at his other spot where he still is, and he came back and he was talking to us and he said, "You two better be careful. You're building a monster, and when you build a monster, you got to feed the monster."
Yep.
And I think about that all the time, that we want to build something that supports our group and supports the team, but we don't want it to build it just for the sake of building it. You know what I mean? We want to build it because it's meaningful. It produces value. And I think that we've managed to hold that line and really, really, hammer it into who we want to be as a company and culture wise. And it just makes it easy to go to work. You know what I mean? When I went to last night, I was putting the girls to bed when I got home. And I said, well, I got to get to work early tomorrow, and I'll probably come in late. I don't know if they're going to go to the beach or leave, they'll wait for me, and then we'll go down to the shore. And I said, because I haven't worked this week. And they said, "Daddy, you went to work on Sunday," because I was out of town all week.
Right.
And in my head, I was like, I didn't even feel like I was at work. I mean, and I was like there, and it's very enjoyable. We're super fortunate when you and I get to travel like that. But I was working after we did stuff. I would come back and, they were yelling at me. I was late the one time. I was on the phone with Kelly, and I was rattling off math as you and I do at people. It's like the Tom Berg way, right? We just start saying numbers
here.
And in my head, I'm doing all the math and relaying it to Kelly, and all the guys are just sitting in the truck watching me. There's nothing in front of me, and I'm just rattling off different things to get to final numbers. And I was like, "Sorry guys, I had 10 minutes. And so I figured I could get that done at that point." But it doesn't feel like work. Yeah. And I hope that a lot of the guys can feel like that. I mean, when you're digging a ditch, that's work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're out in the sun, that's work. But hopefully everybody gets to feel a little bit of the culture that we tried to build, that really, it did genuinely come from what you started. And then I was able to come in and assist with and say, like, okay, let's take this up a little bit.
Well, and you said about the equipment, right? And that back then, I mean, only in the last 3 or 4 years, you guys have taken the equipment off. Because equipment, as a dirt guy, that's cool, right? But like the other day, I was trying to do a count in my head, and I honestly didn't know, the fleet people manage that now. And I didn't know how many exactly excavator track hose we have. I mean, the old days when it was 1, you knew where that track, or there's 2, or there's 3. And I was like, I know what number we're up to, but I didn't know how many are still in the fleet and how many have been transitioned out, that kind of stuff. And it was like thinking about that we have great people in places that it doesn't have to be all under one hat. That's really because you can do it that way, but that's an exhausting life that is not good for anybody. We've talked about that multiple times. And so it's better that, people can really specialize in what they do and allow everybody to do everything better.
Yeah. You know what Ben said, and we'll sort of try and get to a close it up, is we're down there and Ben and JD were talking, right? And Ben and JD, they were looking at this 238 that JD is in love with. I've never heard JD say the word love, but he said he loved that machine. And they were looking at it, and they said, and that's a pretty big machine. It was sitting next to a very big machine.
Yeah.
And Ben and JC said, what's funny is we've worked for a bunch of companies that would be their biggest machine. And if you buy it, that's one of our smallest machines. Now we have 80s and minis, but we're talking like what track hose do you have? You just rattle off the big ones, and we've gotten it's crazy to think where this company is going.
I still remember the first permit load machine we bought, and it was like, oh, how do we haul that? Because we don't have permits. We have to like pay someone to haul it. And now there's, I don't know how many that.
Now we got a flat permit that has, a lot of
items
machines
on
on
it.
it. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
it's one of those things I try and echo your belief system, where we don't need to be on a podcast saying how many machines we have, because what difference does it make? You know what I mean? We got enough to do the work, and that's how many we have.
More important are the people that are sitting in the seats and the iron that's out
That's
there.
it. But I do remember that, you know. So, well, I appreciate everybody listening. Hopefully you enjoyed Just Ford, and I will be back here with Brian on the next one. So
we'll have some leadership on.
We'll have some
podcast next
leadership
time.
and guidance. We'll be less of a rudderless ship, hopefully, with Brian back in the seat with the two mules pulling him.
All right, everybody, have a good one. See ya.